We're live. We come in the morning after a big Purdue win on the road in Alabama. First AP top 10 road win for Purdue since I believe 1973 was the year. Just a massive win overall for Purdue. Uh, the Stars start tonight. Braden Smith had 29, 7 and 4. Trey Kaufman-Renn had 19 and 15, 19, 15 and 5. Both guys really kind of showed why they're preseason All-Americans. Purdue's able to go on the road and beat an excellent Alabama team that coming off of a very big win over St. John's. Just all around kind of an A-plus game for Purdue, I think. If I feel like with this game, it's best to start on the positives, just because I'm not even sure there were any negatives from tonight.
Yeah, just to correct a couple of stats, he would win since 1982, which was Gene Katie's third season, according to the broadcast last night. Something that they love talking about, along with Purdue's relatively small number of turnovers, for as much as they talked about it. This was just an incredibly fun game to watch as a basketball fan, like setting aside allegiances for a moment. This was just a back and forth. There were 20 lead changes and double-digit ties in this game. Purdue pulled away a couple of times. There were multiple points throughout the game where they had like a 7 or an 8-point lead and come right back down the floor, hit a couple of threes, and get right back on both sides. There's a little bit of sloppiness mixed in there too. I think both teams missed a pair of front ends, which was a little bit, early season. Guys are still kind of getting their feet wet. You could definitely see that with a couple of Purdue's role players, especially. But man, you mentioned it. This was the first game for Trey Kaufman-Renn this season. He missed the first two with a hip injury. He looked the part, man. 19 points on 16 shots. He hit a three that looked smooth. He took another one, a contested, and making some of those shots this year, that really opens up the floor for the rest of Purdue's guards. And 15 rebounds, tied for a career high. I don't think anyone knew he had this kind of rebounding performance in him. He clearly heard the noise. And maybe even from the coaching staff who were talking after the Oakland game about how rebounding was an issue. And he took it personally. 15 boards. He was punking Alabama's front court. Oscar Clough chipped in 11. Between the two of them, they had 26 rebounds. Alabama had 28 as a team. This was an incredibly impressive effort from Purdue in all senses.
Yeah, out-rebounded an athletic, physical Alabama team by 24. Went to Alabama, went to their place, and just completely dominated the glass in a way that I'm not sure we've ever seen anybody dominate an Alabama team like that on the glass before. I mean, 24 rebounds is a massive differential. Purdue had 19 offensive rebounds in this game. You give an offense as good as Purdue's, 19 offensive rebounds, and I don't think there's any way you lose that game. But as you said, just a super aesthetically pleasing game. The most enjoyable halves of basketball I've ever watched. It was back and forth. Guys were hitting shots. Good defense. I didn't even think it was a case of both teams just playing awful defense. It was both teams playing pretty good defense, and both teams were hitting shots and executing things on offense. Neither team was fouling. Teams were contesting. Both teams were contesting shots, I thought, pretty well. Really, the difference in this game was on the glass, like you said, visually. The first 5 minutes or so, he played with his hair on fire in a way that I don't think I've ever seen Trey Kaufman-Renn play. That was such an impressive performance by him. He was everywhere. He's flying around. He's the first possession of the game, he's jumping over someone and throwing the ball off a Bama guy to get Purdue an extra possession. Just little things. This team played so intentional and with so much effort last night. That was a performance worthy of being the best team in the country.
Absolutely. I think the story of this game is Trey Kaufman-Renn. He was the KenPom MVP. Braden had an incredible stat line himself, and don't want to sell him short. We'll get to him in a minute, but Trey's presence in this game, you could feel it on the court. You could feel it on the sideline when he was out of the game. He played 34 minutes in this game, and he would have played more if he hadn't been cramping a little bit towards the end of the second half. Probably would have been close to 36 or 37, which would have led Purdue in minutes. They were able to sit Braden for a stretch in the first half with Meyer in there, and whenever Trey came out of the game, Alabama would go and run. It was just his presence on the floor was so important for this team. 19, 15, and 5 is an absurd stat line for a college player. And I mean, he made his presence felt everywhere, including on defense. This was one of the best defensive games, maybe the best defensive game ever played. Alabama's front court is not particularly imposing off the dribble, so I don't want to sit here and act like he's going to be stopping, a day Mara or whoever on the block in the future. But there were a few possessions he got switched on the perimeter and held his own. There was a possession in the second half where he got switched on to Holloway, and Holloway couldn't get by him, to the point where Nate Oates, Alabama's head coach, was yelling at him after that possession for passing out of it and not attacking Trey a little bit more. He got down in his stance and he moved his feet, and then he would just go after those rebounds. And the physicality he brought on both ends of the floor, huge difference for this team.
Yeah, you talked about the Trey Kaufman getting switched on. I wanted to talk about the defense a little bit because I thought the defense impressed me tonight. I think Purdue, for as much criticism I think as the coaching staff is kind of levied on this team for not communicating, this was one of the best executions of a defensive game plan I've seen from this group. I mean, they clearly came into this game with a very good scout, very good game plan from the coaching staff, and the players were able to execute it. And I think that was really important. You saw Philon. That's a guy that we both have been really, really high on this year. He's had a good start to the season. We both had him as a second-team All-American coming into the year. Purdue held him to 11 points on 5 for 14 shooting, and 7 of those 11 points, 3 of those made shots were effectively unguarded transition shots. You had the 2 breakaway dunks in the transition 3 that he hit kind of over Fletcher, but I mean, that wasn't against the Purdue set half-court defense. He got nothing in the half court. He had nothing. He was 1 for 6 from 3. Sure, you can chalk it up to miss shots, but the threes he were taking were like these off the dribble step back threes. They were contested. They were tough shots. Nothing was easy for him. And I think that I was so impressed by the defense's ability to switch when they needed to. I thought the bigs played really, really well, especially in the second half off those ball screens. Like you saw Clough and Trey Kaufman get switched on the perimeter a little bit. And you saw some of the guards get switched on to the Aiden Sherrills and the Taylor Bones that are playing for Bama. And the guards held their own inside, did a good job making things difficult for the bigs underneath. And Purdue's bigs were able to switch on to Alabama's guards and really not get burnt. And on the other end of the court, I thought Purdue was able to get Alabama's big switched on to Braden Smith, and Braden Smith looked across and said, "You can't check me."
Yeah. Braden down the stretch was incredible. I mean, he took this game over in the second half. He was a little bit more passive in the second half. Like I mentioned, he was able to sit for a 6-minute stretch when Omer Meyer was kind of at the reins. And we'll get to Omer in a second. I thought this was by far his best game as a Purdue Boilermaker. But I mean, in the second half, Braden had 29 points on just 19 shots. He was 5 or 10 from 3. That included a couple misses late on ones he probably should have had, open ones. 7 rebounds, 4 assists. I did have 3 turnovers. He got blitzed a couple times in the second half and wasn't fast enough making decisions with the ball. But other than that, this was a flawless Braden game. He was aggressive when he needed to be. I mean, he got downhill and got to the rim really whenever he wanted to. This was a criticism of him last year, probably maybe one of the only ones that was warranted of all the criticism he took last year. And notice he was too comfortable taking those baseline fadeaway twos when he could get to the rim more easily. And a lot of Purdue's losses last year would be inefficient Braden games where he would just take a bunch of those shots. And it felt like whenever he felt like he needed to do more on offense, that was the shot he wanted to take. And he did take a couple and made a couple in this game. But he seemed clearly focused on taking more threes and getting to the rim more often. A very Nate Oates style approach, if you will, and it really paid off in this game. He got just getting downhill. Both defenses, I thought, were playing drop coverage with their 5 and then switching pretty much everything else. And Purdue was able to take advantage of those matchups, and Alabama wasn't.
Yeah, I think Clough and Jacobson's ability in this game to be a screener and when they have an advantageous matchup was huge. I thought because Alabama was switching with Bull Bowen and playing drop with the 5, usually Sherrell, sometimes Williamson, it meant that the Trey Kaufman Ren ball screen wasn't always there because Alabama just switched that and they were okay with that switch. But you could bring Clough up and Sherrell was going to be in drop, and then all of a sudden now you're back into your offense. And I thought this was a really good game from the centers, but this year, and I didn't think that was going to happen. I don't know quite what I expected from him development wise, but his ability to finish through contact this year has been superb. Like there have been a couple of times where he's gone downhill, gotten downhill, goes through the chest of a much taller, much bigger defender, and is able to finish through contact at the rim with and without getting the foul call. Like it was 80-80, and he's able to attack downhill at Taylor Bowen, go right through his chest and finish at the rim. And that's something that I don't really think he did a ton last year. Like he really didn't get to the rim a ton, and when he did get to the rim, he wasn't looking to finish through contact. He was either looking for an open layup or to dish it to Trey Kaufman. And I think through the first 3 games, you've seen much more of this kind of intention of getting to the rim and finishing at the rim from Braden. And he's had success. Like he's shooting well at the rim, and I think this is why you're seeing the scoring numbers jump. And I think it's a clear tonight was a clear indication he's the best player in the country, even though Trey Kaufman was the best player in this game. I think it's pretty clear Braden Smith's the best player in the country after tonight.
Yeah. I mean, last year, whenever he got to the rim, he was I would describe him as crafty more than strong. He had these sick little step through moves to get some open layups. But oftentimes he'd be fading away on some floaters, or he would pass out of it if there's a big camp down the lane that he couldn't get around. And this year he's just going up with it and finishing over contact more often than not. Yeah, he took 12 free throws in this game, 10 of them. Missed the first 2, an uncharacteristic trip to the line. I don't know if Bama does chicken or fries, or if they have anything like that for the fans. But I hope they got something out of it, because this is about the only good thing to be walking away from this game with. But other than that, he was flawless from the line, and down the stretch, that was big. Purdue struggled from the free throw line in general throughout the game. He ended up 69.6% from the line, which is not terrible. It's not good either.
A lot of that was picked up at the end with Braden hitting 10 straight free throws in the second half.
Yeah, that number was really boosted by Braden. He went 10 of 12. CJ Cox did his, finish his 3-point play. But, I mean, Clough was 3 of 4 on the stretch as well. He did his job with the line. But Meyer and Harris both missed the front end of a 1-and-1. Jacobson missed a pair of free throws. This is just generally because you're denying yourself the second free throw shot. So if there's one criticism to take away, one thing that Painter's probably going to be working on in practice this week is going to be free throw shooting. Probably a little bit like what rebounding was this week in practice. But other than that, there's really not a whole lot to criticize here.
Yeah, I think Purdue did a really good job too. If Alabama kind of forced them to play one-on-one to an extent, and Purdue did a good job of being able to move the ball outside of that and getting the ball to guys in advantageous positions. So it wasn't just into a dribble handoff. And I thought that Painter and PJ Thompson did a great job of getting creative in the second half. The way Alabama was guarding those ball screens with their guards, they were making it really difficult for Braden to come back and get the ball on those dribble handoffs that Purdue likes to run. I think you saw PJ and Paint make an adjustment to start running a pin down screen into that action to just kind of free up Braden a little bit more, give him just an inch of space, and he's able to kind of do what he needs to do to get the ball back. I thought they did a great job of putting Purdue guys. And speaking of that, I think you saw Omer Mayer get kind of a little bit more extended run than he's gotten through the first 2 games, and it paid off for Purdue. He played really well. He gave Braden a nice 6-minute stretch on the bench where he could sit and rest in a way that he wasn't able to do last year. it's just such an aesthetically pleasing game that Omer plays. Like it's this energetic, it's this ball in his hands, and wow, that jumper looks good.
Yeah, and that jumper is pure. He was only 1 of 3 from 3, but he hit both of his little elbow pull-ups. And he had played 17 minutes in this game. He didn't really play all the second half of the second half. Like down the stretch, it was pretty much just the starters. And I think Chikari was in there a little bit for CJ at one point. But that's going to happen when he plays 20 minutes the second half. There's just not going to be a ton of opportunity for Omar to play. He'll mix in his regular rotation. But the only time he's going to have like an extended run as Purdue's lead ball carrier is 4 to 6 minutes. And they want to sit Braden in the first half. And this was something we couldn't do last year. Like it's a little bit like Zach Edey, like his senior year. Like whenever Edey would come out of the game to try and give him a 3-minute breather, the opponent, really no matter who they were, would go on some like 10-2 run immediately. That was what happened whenever Braden was out of the game. Like Purdue's offense just could not function, and that was one of the main reasons they wanted to go out and get Omar Meyer, who will be Purdue's lead point guard next year. But for this year, his job is to give Purdue a competent scoring, passing point guard when Braden's on the bench. I mean, his skill set is very similar to Braden's, and obviously he's not as advanced as Braden yet. But you can see the flashes, and when I thought he was a very steadying presence in that first half when Purdue needed some action. He was able to give Braden 6 minutes on the bench, which sounds crazy. Like I didn't realize it was that long in real time, but they just didn't sitting on the bench. Which was just something that even when we brought in Omar, I wasn't sure we'd be able to do this year.
Yeah, and not only that, but I thought defensively he looked good. Like I go back to the play at the end of the first half where he's guarding Phylon full court. He picks up Phylon, he gets screened. Whoever the big was, I think it was TKR, did a good job of putting his body Phylon's way and giving Omar a second. Omar's able to recover and contest Phylon at the rim, keeping verticality, not fouling. Great contest. Phylon misses the layup because of the contest. Purdue's able to go into the half with a 2-point lead.
And
that was such an impressive defensive play to me.
Like he got the deflection at the beginning of that possession.
Yeah, like almost picked Phylon's pocket. Like, or no, it was a pass. Almost stole the pass. Like, I was so impressed by Omar. He genuinely looked like a good defender last night. I think I know he had some defensive concerns coming into the season. I don't think he got lost off ball. I don't think there were a bunch. There were a couple times where it happened,
but he wasn't the only one. He was not the only one.
Yeah, he wasn't the only one, and it wasn't glaringly obvious. Like there were times there have been certain guys for Purdue in the last few years where it's like every other possession that guy loses his guy, and it's not even guys hitting shots every possession. Like sometimes you'll just notice he loses his guy. That happened to Omar a couple times, but not really. And he was good. He was genuinely a good on-ball defender tonight.
Yeah, he really held his own when we needed him to. And defensively as a whole, I thought this team did their job. I mean, Alabama is an incredibly efficient offense. If there's a team this year that's going to kind of overtake Purdue for KenPom number one in offense, it's probably Alabama. It's that data system, only take layups, only take threes, which are just incredibly high efficient shots in basketball anyway. And he has the personnel and the scheme to make those easy shots even easier than they usually are. And so they play super fast. They take a ton of shots. They don't turn the ball over. That's an under-discussed aspect of its offense is they just don't turn the ball over. They had 6 turnovers in this game, and 4 of them were from LeBaron Phylon, who, 11 points, 4 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 steals, and a block. Like, he was still stuffing the stat sheet even when his shot wasn't falling. But I thought Purdue did a great job defensively on him. The game plan seemed pretty solid. They were trying to force him into taking these tougher twos, which for the game was kind of pointing this out. They were baiting Alabama's guards and taking the shots Oates does not want them to take by basically taking away everything at the rim. And then in the second half, especially sort of selling out to run Alabama off the three-point line. I thought both coaches made some great halftime adjustments defensively. And, Painter was getting burned. Purdue's getting burned by open threes from Bama's guards in the first half. They did not do a good job in the rotations for much of that half, and it was leading to a lot of open threes. In the second half, they had one or two in transition, and that was pretty much it. Purdue really locked down. And then on the other end, Alabama was getting burned by Braden Smith in the first half and Trey Kaufman scoring. Well, they really adjusted how they defended Trey, and they were blitzing Braden more aggressively. And so Purdue adjusted by getting Trey the ball in the short roll. He had 5 assists in this game, led the team in assists. He had 2 turnovers both games in the first half, did not turn the ball over in the second half. He was fantastic as a playmaker and a decision maker down the stretch of this game, which was one of the main things that really flipped this game in the last 10 minutes or so. Well, Trey starting to pick up part of that Alabama defense about the free throw line. He was doing some high-low action with Jacobson and Clough. He was doing cross-court passes to Fletch and Braden for open shots. He was getting offensive rebounds and passing out or going back up as needed. That's just a fantastic game plan-wise and scheme from both coaches. Just a great chess match.
Yeah, that's why this was one of the most enjoyable college basketball games I've watched in quite some time. Again, just going back to it, 15 fouls from Purdue, 19 from Alabama, 16 total turnovers, clean game. This was not a foul fest. This was not a turnover fest. This was both teams shot well. But yeah, as you said, this is just such a fun game. Trey Kaufman ran that short roll. That play where Bama blitzed the ball screen and Braden hit DKR at the elbow on the short roll. And he immediately turns and threw a lob to Jacobson over, I think it was Sherrell. Just, how do you even guard that? How genuinely? Because if you force the ball to the best point guard in the country's hands with the trap, you're now giving an All-American 4 who's, I think, showing to be just an incredible playmaker at the 4 spot, a 2-on-1 opportunity with a 7-4 guy on the other side. It's just ridiculous. And if you do try to take away the 7-4 guy, you're giving an All-American 4 his best shot, his favorite shot, a little 8-foot push shot. You can't just leave Trey Kaufman right in that situation. It's such a tough off team to guard defensively. Alabama probably had one of the most perfect, the way they guarded Purdue in the second half is about as well as you can guard Purdue, I think. They made life very difficult for Purdue. They did things to frustrate Braden a little bit. They were able to blitz that ball screen. They didn't let Purdue just spray out the shooters every single possession and get wide open threes. And Purdue had stuff for it. Purdue had guys that just looked across and said, "We're the best players on the floor." I think that's really what came down to it is Braden Smith said, "I'm the best player on the floor," and went and scored. And Trey Kaufman said, "I'm the best player on the floor," and went and scored and rebounded and passed. And it just so impressive. And I wanted to talk about the bigs now a little bit because I thought Purdue's front court, Oscar Clough and Daniel Jacobson, as much as we talked about Trey Kaufman, Wren, those two, just A-plus game from those two. I thought Clough was everywhere. He dominated the second half. There was a ton of maturity, I thought, that was achieved by Jacobson in the second half. He had a little bit of a rough first half, in my opinion. There were a couple possessions where Paint just looked like he didn't even know what to do with Jacobson. He just pulled him and put Clough immediately back in. And he turned back to him in the second half, I think in large part because Alabama started to get some stuff at the rim. And Jacobson came in and really took away pretty much everything Alabama and it started to get at the rim and kind of shut that defense down. And I thought he did a great job in the second half of rebounding when he was in. He's never going to be a dominant rebounder, I don't think. He was a good rebounder. He was going up over people, grabbing the rebound, holding it high above everyone, and getting it to a guard. He was strong with the basketball when he came down. I was really, really impressed by the maturity Jacobson showed in the second half, and I think Purdue really needed it.
Yeah, this was a phenomenal game from Oscar Clough. This is what he was brought to Purdue to do. He scored the first 4 points for Purdue. Seemed like a very schemed, dedicated play by Painter to say, okay, we're going to go to Clough early. He obviously had a monster game when he was at South Dakota State against Alabama last year. And 9 points, 11 rebounds, 2 assists, no turnovers. I mean, this was a great game from Clough, and I think he's going to have a lot of those type of stat lines this year. He's never going to be the most prolific scorer. He's going to pick his spots. There's going to be opportunities if they're overplaying Trey to get Clough the ball one-on-one. If he's one-on-one in the post, he can score over anybody. He missed a couple of bunnies, or, there's only 3 of 7 from the floor, so he probably could have had more like 13 in this game, but still, I mean, he was fantastic. Jacobson, maybe a C- first half and an A- second half, I thought. It's interesting watching Jacobson and really iffy hands when he's trying to catch passes and grab rebounds. If he can get a little bit stronger, like the touch he has around the rim is just so elite already for a 7'4" guy. I mean, when he's doing his little push shots, when he's doing his little hooks or floaters or layups, it just comes so softly off his hand. He just drops it right in there because he knows no one can block him. He's standing above everyone else. He doesn't need to force anything. And he had some tough rebounds second half. He only finished with 5 a game, but he stepped up when we needed him to. And how many? Yeah, 16 minutes, which I think is probably about what he's going to play in games like this. He brings some rim protection that Clough doesn't. Like you said, they started getting downhill to the rim with Sherrell, especially, who talk about guys who impressed in the second half. I thought Sherrell was fantastic.
Yeah, I was really
offensively in the
impressed.
second
I knocked
half.
him a little bit in the preview, and I was really impressed by Aiden Sherrell in this game.
He was not just a 3-point shooter, which he's kind of been offensively to this point in his career. He realized he had a matchup advantage one-on-one with Purdue's bigs when he was driving from the top of the key, and so he would just get down to the rim against Clough and TKR and just finish over them. And when Jacobson was in the game, he wasn't really able to do that, and that was big for Purdue down the stretch. Purdue didn't have any blocks in this game, which is maybe a little bit disappointing. If there's like one issue Purdue had coming in the game that you were maybe a little bit concerned about. Alabama takes 44 threes and a bunch more like paint jump shots. It's just they were not taking a bunch of layups that Purdue's bigs were going to swat.
Yeah, I mean, I just straight up, there were only a few really 6 or 7, maybe 8 chances in the entire game. In large part, that has a lot to do with what Purdue did defensively on the perimeter, which really impressed me. And as you talked about, just shot selection from Alabama, that's part of it. I mean, Alabama took 44 threes, and then half of the 2s they took were either breakaway fast break layups or mid-range jumpers, which is rare for a NATO off. And I thought another big thing was that they didn't have any block shots, but I thought they altered shots at the rim. I think when Jacobson was in the game, he altered shots at the rim. He didn't block anything, but there were a couple shots that I thought he affected, and there were a couple other times where guys didn't even go up because 7'4" Daniel Jacobson standing right there with his arms up.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited for the future. And we haven't gotten to talk about Sinan Juan, who's going to be joining him in the front court. Very exciting player. But I think the flashes were there for really the first time this year for Jacobson. You saw wow, that guy could be awesome in a few years. And he didn't even really show the 3-point shooting, but just his ability as a lob threat, I think. And as you talked about, his touch around the basket, if he's able to start catching the ball a little cleaner, and he puts on another 10, 15 pounds of muscle, gets a little stronger, you're looking at one of the best centers in the country, I think, because he's just going to be a 7'4" shot blocker who's able to do things offensively that most bigs aren't even that good at. And I think he'll be above average scoring the basketball. And I'm really, really excited for the future of Daniel Jacobson.
Yeah, his shot looks a little flat to me right now. I noticed this on the free throws, and he didn't take any threes in this game, but he has earlier this season, and they all just look a little bit flat. There's not a ton of arc on them right now, so I think he has some stuff to work out there. But yeah, I think his potential is sky high. Obviously, it always has been, and today or last night, you really saw what it can look like when he's starting to click. I mean, he had 9 and 5 with an assist in this game. Not the most productive game, but he only played 16 minutes. Was 4 of 6 from the floor. He got to his spots. He caught some lobs from Braden and TKR, and that's going to be his role this year. And he'll expand next year when he presumably steps into the starting role with Juan as his backup. Before we get out of here, I did want to talk a little bit about CJ Cox and Jakari Harris, the two guys I haven't really talked about yet. CJ Cox only took 2 shots, 3 points, 2 rebounds, was his only stat line. He was everywhere defensively in this game.
He also, for what it's worth, had the highest offensive rating of anybody on the team for Purdue that played today. So I think that speaks in large part to what he was doing kind of off the ball as well. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
That could also be based on who he's playing with. We kind of
True.
talked about this in some of the other recaps. The different, like, he plays next to Braden and Fletch exclusively, pretty much, and then maybe a little bit next to Omer in the first half. But they weren't really running out, like him next to Jakari and Omer. Like, he got to play with the starting guards, so I think probably boost that rating a little bit relative to some of the other players. But even so, defensively, he was a menace. We talked about how inefficient a night Philon had. That was in large part due to CJ Cox. Jakari Harris a little bit too. When Harris was in the game, he spent some time on Philon, but Cox is the main one who he made everything tough on Philon, and we were looking for to step up. I mean, we sat here on the preview and said we didn't know if Purdue had anyone who could check Philon. And based on how the first 2 games went, returns on CJ Cox and Jakari Harris perimeter defenders weren't great against these, mid-major opponents. They weren't terrible defensively, but they did not look like they had taken a step as like go-to perimeter defenders who can like lock down their guy. They did tonight. They did last night, especially CJ Cox. Jakari Harris, on the other hand, 4 points, 4 rebounds with a steal as well. Did have 1 turnover. He's been a little bit up and down through the first part of the season. He had that explosive exhibition game, a lot of offseason buzz from Purdue insiders that he had taken a huge step forward, and a little bit rattled at times. He had this great move in the first half, late shot clock, 1-on-1, spins around Reitzel, gets right to the cup, and just underlays the shot just a touch, and then comes to the foul trying to get the ball back. You could see it on his face. He just was so frustrated with himself. But then a few minutes later, it's a late shot clock contested 3 to keep Purdue right with Alabama as they start hitting some shots late. He played 15 minutes in this game. He's probably only going to get 15 to 18 minutes a night for the most part. But if he can take advantage of those minutes, and he has some ISO scoring stuff that a lot of these other bench players don't, there's a niche for him on this team if he can get his confidence back.
Yeah, that movie talked about where he got to the rim on Reitzel. Like, I loved that. I was impressed by that. I didn't really know Jakari could do that. Like, he kind of just blew past Reitzel and got right to the rim. Like, went right through him. And I was, obviously wasn't able to finish, but I like seeing the move and missing the shot rather than not being able to do that, because he at least showed he can do that. And I mean, this is a little bit of a bigger Omer game, so also going to cut into his minutes slightly. I was overall just kind of impressed with what the 2-guard gave us in general. I thought this was a very high floor game from that position. Like, if you get that exact game from those two every single game, I think you feel good about what you're getting from the 2 spot, because it's not the most offensive production, but you got pretty high level defense out of those 2 tonight, I think. And like, that was a big reason why Purdue was able to win this game, is because those 2 pretty much shut down an NBA guard, like a lottery pick level guard for most of the game.
Absolutely. I mean, the offensive production just isn't going to be there most nights. We saw CJ had like 27 against Nebraska last year. Like, there's going to be individual nights where one or the both of them can really go off. But the only players Purdue had in double figures in this game were Braden and Trey with 29 and 19 respectively. Clough and Jacobson both had 9. Fletch and Meyer both had 7. There's just not a lot of shots to go around outside of the big 3. Fletcher Lawyer probably had like a B- C+ game from his standards. It's just 7 points. He'd have 3 rebounds and a pair of assists and 2 steals for Fletch. Shout out Fletch. But I mean, he just wasn't super efficient for the floor, but he also only took 8 shots. Alabama did a good job of making sure they were closing out on him and not letting him get open looks. I don't know. He burned Alabama 2 years ago. I forget what his stat line was last year, but he's a floor spacer for Purdue in every sense of the word. He commands defensive attention that no other shooter, even Braden Smith, when he's off ball, just doesn't command. And so he made things easier for Purdue's base in this game.
Yeah, I thought a lot of that was Alabama's game plan. A lot of it, especially in the first half, seemed to be centered around kind of making Braden and TKR beat Bama, like scoring the basketball, especially Braden. I think you very clearly saw fear of Braden's passing ability first against Alabama, and I think you'll see that against a lot of teams and this year until Braden proves that he's every time you do that, he's just going to go for 30. And I think tonight kind of showed like, yeah, go ahead. Like, please just let me go one-on-one the whole game because I'm the best player in the country and you guys can't guard me. So it's like, if you want to go one-on-one, I'll go score every possession. And I think that in that sense, because if you do start to bring guys to Braden and start to bring all the gravity that he has from that ball screen, if you're worried about him scoring, like that's when you get Fletch going. That's when you get Braden's just spraying out 40% 3-point shooters. And I thought Bama did a very good job of just kind of taking that away and being like, yeah, we know Braden's a special passer. We know you have the shooters on the wing. Like, we'd rather make Braden beat us, and to Braden's credit, he did.
I mean, we saw it last year against Houston in the Sweet 16 game. Like, that's the best defense in college basketball last year. And by the way, Houston is shaping up to be by far the best defense in college basketball again this year. But Braden had 15 assists. I mean, the game plan coming in for Houston was, we're not going to let Braden score, and we're going to make other guys make shots. And he carved up that defense. If Purdue secures that last rebound, they have a chance for the game-winning shot against a team that beat Duke in the Final Four and had a late lead against Florida, almost won a national title. And I think, like you said, teams are just not going to let Braden do that this year. And that's what you can do when getting to the rim. We're not going to let you have 15 assists in this game. And Braden's okay with that. Maybe freshman, sophomore year Braden would be a little more uncomfortable in that role, but senior year Braden is more than okay taking, what did he take? 19 shots in this game?
Yeah, it's like 10 threes. It's like 10 threes.
10
That's
threes.
a lot of volume.
He made 5 of them. Probably could have made more. And if they're going to guard Braden like that, he is going to have a lot more 29-point scoring nights.
Yeah, I was very impressed. He's so good at just taking what the defense gives him that really you can't give him anything because it's just, I mean, it's automatic. Like he's such a good player. He was able to burn Alabama, and I could talk about Braden and his performance for quite some time, but unfortunately I do have a meeting to get to, so I think we'll wrap it up here in the next couple minutes. Purdue is back in action against Akron on Sunday. We will have a preview out for that as well. But overall, I'll let you give your closing thoughts on this performance from Alabama. I was very excited. We talked about this before we hopped on the recording. Like this was the game to answer all the questions. Like all the questions surrounding this Purdue team were effectively answered tonight, and I was really impressed. Overall, just an A+ game for me. Be able to go on the road against a team as good as Alabama. I think that win is going to age better than just about any other win in college basketball, especially being a true road win. I'll give it to you now to kind of close out, but just I was very impressed with this game.
Yeah, this is going to be one of the best wins in the country. Get into January, February, start talking bracketology, start talking about like, who has this could very well be the best one. Like, you don't get too many true road wins in the non-conference against an Alabama team that looks very good. I mean, I was impressed with Alabama in this game as well. They obviously have the true road win over St. John's team that started the season top 5. Like, this is a top 10 team, I think, and this win might be one of the best in the country. come Selection Sunday. I thought top to bottom, like everyone who played, Jack Miner only played 6 minutes. Probably would have played fewer if Trey hadn't been cramping up. He didn't do a lot, but every other player who scored that checked into the game for Purdue, they all made an impact. Like you said, this answered the questions for Purdue after a pair of kind of sleepy performances. I mentioned this, I think, on the recap for the Oakland, but it kind of felt like Purdue was treating those games like an extension of the exhibition season, attitude-wise, with the players in the court. They knew they could go 80% and win those games, and Oakland made them sweat a little bit in the second half, and they came out of that with a 10-point win, and then they had something to prove. With Trey back in this game, being bumped down to number 2 and passed by Houston team in the polls, and they answered all their questions and then some. I think you'll be hard pressed to find an analyst that's not going to have Purdue number 1 or at least top 2. There were a couple that dropped them further than 2, so move them back up the rankings a little bit. This was what we wanted to see from Purdue, a Purdue team that entered the season with national title expectations, and I thought this game also answered questions defensively. It wasn't like Purdue won 100-70 or 100-90 or something. They took the air out of the ball. Something we didn't really get to in this recap, maybe we should have, was how much Purdue was able to control the pace against an Alabama team that really frustrated them at times, I think. They got the job done, and I think they got to come back and avoid the trap game against a very good Akron team that could easily be a 13 seed in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about that game. I love Akron. Tavari Johnson's one of my favorite players in the country. My pick for MAC Player of the Year, by the way, as a MAC guy. I know a lot of people like Peter Suter. I'm a Tavari Johnson guy. But we'll get into that. We'll preview that game. Yeah, overall, very exciting win, and we will see you guys probably in the next 24 hours, I guess, for this Akron preview.